research project, we decided to do a Shakespeare research project, mainly just to do with like his works of literature and analyzing characters, key themes, and really what Shakespeare meant as a whole with certain plays of his, and as well as modern interpretations of the plays, modern interpretations of Shakespeare himself. And yeah, that was just mainly our idea with researching Shakespeare as an author. Um, he is probably one of the most famous playwrights of all time, and his work is super accessible and something that pretty much everybody has to learn at some point in their life. So if you put the effort into trying to understand it, it can be something interesting. So yeah, that's kind of why we decided on Shakespeare. The introduction, William Shakespeare is one of the most influential and timeless authors ever to have lived. For our research project, we chose to analyze some of his best and most interesting works of literature, characters, as well as motivations behind his work. Through this analysis, we were able to understand Shakespeare's motivations as well as potential inspiration for other works based on his ideas. Characters of Shakespeare's have been inspiration for modern day phenomena as well, and many are unaware of the author's influence upon much of today's most famous media. Shakespeare's plays are divided into three categories: tragedy, comedy, and history. We will cover at least one of each. Much of Shakespeare's most famous work is tragedy. We will also explore modern day interpretations of each play as to better our understanding of the work, as well as public and modern day reactions to the work itself. The first play that we'll be analyzing is Romeo and Juliet from 1597. Possibly Shakespeare's most famous play, Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy embedded in romance. The two title characters are a part of feuding families known as the Capulets and the Montagues. Despite this, the two develop a romance that ends in the deaths of both titular characters. Much of the play's popularity largely relates to the themes present, young love, and the destructive power of societal division. Romeo and Juliet was written in the early stages of Shakespeare's career and is now known as a timeless masterpiece. The play has been adapted into many different films. More famous versions of the particular play are variations of the source material, not always entirely faithful to the play, but incorporate most elements, and in most cases, the entire story itself. It just might be with a couple of tweaks and different little changes. Prime example is the 1996 film that stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. This is the most famous version of the play on screen. It's probably my favorite version of Romeo and Juliet. Um, the film combines elements of the play and takes a modern spin on them, introducing viewers to the play. This proved to be an effective strategy as the film made close to $150 million and cemented itself as a cult favorite Shakespeare adaptation. Another example of this is Shakespeare in Love, a 1998 film focusing around Shakespeare himself. So Shakespeare is the main character, not Romeo and Juliet. They, the two main characters of this movie are Shakespeare himself as well as another woman named Viola. They are not Romeo and Juliet, as many people get confused about that. This explores his motivations in writing Romeo and Juliet itself. This proved to be a success as well as the film won 7 Academy Awards. I believe this is Gwyneth Paltrow's Academy Award that she won. A second aspect to Romeo and Juliet's impact as a work of literature comes down to its widespread publication. Almost every high school student will read the play, as it is found in many school curriculums and is so widely known. This is how these themes become prevalent, as the more young people are exposed to them, the better their understanding of literary themes. Shakespeare's work can be complicated to decipher, but the characters and themes in Romeo and Juliet are not as complicated as some of his other plays, making this a good place to start for young readers. The ending here is where much analysis can come from this play. Um, Romeo believes Juliet has died in the last act, and therein decides that he must be with her in death, and he cannot live without her. After finding Juliet's inanimate body, Romeo drinks a vial of poison and lays next to her, dying. Once Juliet awakens, she discovers Romeo's body and kisses him, trying to commit suicide to be with him to get the poison off of his mouth. Once this fails, she stabs herself in the chest with his dagger and dies. This tragic ending plays into the overall theme of social discourse, driving families and children to horrible events. After the deaths of Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets and Montagues decide to end their feud. This is the story's huge presentation as that if there was never any feud, or if their parents had let them be together in the first place, the two may have lived. And this is where the tragic aspect comes, and that theme of just, if they didn't fight, there would have been no deaths. Overall, Romeo and Juliet is the play unique to Shakespeare's first pursuit at romantic tragedy as a genre that holds space in the society today through its themes and adaptations. Another play is Coriolanus. Coriolanus by William Shakespeare is a play that explores themes of politics, class, violence, and family. It showcases how personal beliefs can go against political demands. It also demonstrates that ambition and rage can lead to downfall. The main character, Coriolanus, experiences a downfall when he runs for the council because of his refusal to show respect to the general population. Because of Coriolanus's firm belief that he is superior to the common people, he does not receive their support. His arrogance makes him an enemy to both common people and their leaders. When he lashes out at Cynicis and Brutus, they have him banished from Rome. Angry and humiliated, Coriolanus joins his old enemy, Offendus. Offendius. I don't know if I'm completely pronouncing that correctly. And together they make plans to attack Rome. However, the theme of family emerges when Coriolanus's mother, wife, and son beg him to retreat from this attack. Coriolanus agrees because of the love and respect he has for his family. In the end, love overpowered Coriolanus's anger towards Rome. This decision angers Aufidius. I believe that's right. Motivated by the feeling of betrayal, rage, and possibly even jealousy, Aufidius kills Coriolanus. This is the true tragedy aspect of Coriolanus and that conflict of the play. The 2011 film adaptation of Coriolanus, directed by Ralph Fiennes, I believe he also starred in it as I think he was Coriolanus. I haven't seen the film myself, but I do know that he was in it to some capacity. Gives Shakespeare's classic play a more modern twist by setting the story in a modern day environment that is struggling with war and political instability. The setting uses images of modern warfare such as soldiers, and tanks. This causes the story to be relevant to current global conflicts we face nowadays. The film keeps the themes of the original play, such as pride, power, loyalty, and class, but makes them feel relevant to today's society. In the original play, Coriolanus' downfall is caused by stubbornness. This remains true in the film. The film also showcases conflict between powerful leaders and common people through current political tools such as social media and protests. The movie reminds us that issues discussed in the play are so relevant in today's society. The next play is Macbeth from 1623. Sorry. Macbeth tells the story of a once noble and respected man brought to ruin by his own ambition and dark urges in his pursuit of power. The title character is a Scottish general who is well known and renowned by Duncan, the King of Scotland. Macbeth encounters three witches who tell him that he will be the King of Scotland. He writes to his wife, Lady Macbeth, and informs her about what the witches have told him. This ignites Lady Macbeth to persuade her husband into becoming king by any means necessary. This would include murder. This creates a murderous incentive in Macbeth, taking the life of the king and anyone who could potentially prevent he and his wife's goals. This was Banquo, I'm pretty sure. Macduff, the Scottish thane who is caught on to Macbeth's acts, attacks Macbeth on the battlefield and eventually kills him, with Lady Macbeth committing suicide prior to this due to the guilt. By the time Macbeth reaches its end, many may question how in nature it could be considered a tragedy, as the two most evil and immoral individuals were the ones who ended up dying. The tragedy in question is Macbeth's character. He starts the play as a beacon of honor and justice who had a close relationship with the king, By the end, he is a murderous tyrant, hell bent on the image of power his wife had planted in his mind. The unique tragedy has to do with Macbeth's character, which separates the play from other tragedies such as Romeo and Juliet or Hamlet, which focus more so on the deaths of innocent characters who didn't really deserve what they had coming. Destruction plays a huge role here, especially pertaining to one of Shakespeare's most infamous villains, Lady Macbeth. Shakespeare's characterization is one of the things that made Macbeth so interesting to read. Lady Macbeth, in particular, is a fascinating and poignant character in the play. For Macbeth's time, a villainous woman was a concept relatively unexplored. Shakespeare changed this narrative, making Lady Macbeth the driving aspect towards Macbeth's demise. She is vicious as well as power hungry and would stop at absolutely nothing to achieve her goals. Ultimately, guilt catches up to Lady Macbeth. She falls into a state of madness at her misdeeds and eventually commits suicide. She follows the same path as her treacherous husband and succumbs to a similar outcome while not having an exact outcome that Macbeth had, which is more so by force. Her madness at her own guilt overcomes her, which is somewhat worse in my opinion. The characters and themes of guilt make Macbeth something worth studying. Another interesting aspect of Macbeth is the presence of witchcraft. The three witches play an important role in Macbeth's downfall, frequently delivering mysterious messages and somewhat tormenting him. They foreshadow his downfall and fight with Macduff and his role as King of Scotland. The witches seem like they could be a villainous force at first, like at the beginning. I believe they're actually the first thing that you see. If you go to see a production of Macbeth in real time, they are the first thing you are exposed to. Um, we soon learn, like after, they are attempting to warn Macbeth's eventual treachery. So they're basically warning both the audience of the play and somewhat Macbeth himself at the eventual treachery and immoral deeds that he's going to be partaking in. Um, they play a unique role as characters, and their presence in the play is fun to watch, especially in film and stage adaptations, as it takes a break from that somewhat political uh, aspect of Macbeth. Like it's more so rooted in politics and power drivenness and kings and queens. So it's kind of cool to see that element introduced. Several film adaptations have been released. 2021's The Tragedy of Macbeth stars Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington in the titular roles. This is probably my favorite version of Macbeth to watch as a film. It's probably the most easy to understand as it's super modern, but I also saw one that was from the 1950s. That's a bit harder to follow. Next is The Merchant of Venice from 1605. This is a comedy play. Um, the Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare explores themes of revenge, friendship, wealth, and prejudice. The story focuses on Antonio, a merchant who borrows money from Shylock, a Jewish moneylender, in order to help his friend Bassanio. If Antonio cannot pay the loan, Shylock demands 1 pound of Antonio's flesh. Throughout friendship, Throughout the play, Shylock seeks revenge for the wrongs he has suffered. Meanwhile, Antonio and his friends value loyalty and friendship. The play also shows tension between wealth and personal relationships, as it also showcases prejudice against Shylock because of his religion. This is one of Shakespeare's comedy plays, as it does not tie into any elements of tragedy. As comedic as it is at times, it is mainly thought provoking. The issues discussed in The Merchant of Venice are still relevant in today's society. Shylock is treated unfairly because of his religion. Such discrimination is still seen today. The play also looks at how money affects relationships. This is something we can all relate to in a world where money affects people's choices. Overall, the main themes of this play are friendship and loyalty, which are timeless. Antonio values Bassanio so much that he is willing to risk his own life by borrowing money from Shylock to help him be with Portia, who is the princess who I believe Bassanio was trying to court. Such acts of loyalty are timeless and relevant for anyone, regardless of their generation. Next is Hamlet from 1623. Hamlet by William Shakespeare explores themes such as revenge, madness, grief, and uncertainty. Revenge is the main theme as the main character, Hamlet, is determined to avenge his father's death. Hamlet believes Claudius, his uncle, is responsible for his father's death. Throughout the play, Hamlet questions himself about justice and morality. His procrastinates and proposes his plan to kill Claudius. Sorry, I misread that. He procrastinates and postpones his plan to kill Claudius. Sorry, that's hard to say. At times, Hamlet wonders whether seeking revenge is the right thing to do. Hamlet revolves around uncertainty as Hamlet struggles to decide on what to do and who to trust. The play also looks at madness, both real and fake. Hamlet pretends to have gone mad in order to hide his plans. Meanwhile, after the death of her father, Ophelia descends into a true madness. Death is another major theme in Hamlet, as Hamlet often wonders about the meaning of life and the afterlife. And the sort of ironic thing here is at the end of Hamlet, spoiler alert if you haven't read it, every single character, pretty much every major character throughout the entire play ends up dead. So there's like no major characters come the end of Hamlet, so it's kind of bleak. Hamlet is one of the most well known plays because, like many of Shakespeare's plays, it deals with the universal emotions that the audience can relate to. Hamlet's inner struggles with doubt reflect how many people feel when facing difficult choices in life. The themes revenge and family conflict continue to appear in modern stories today and in people's lives. Hamlet also focuses on the mental health of several characters. It explores how grief and uncertainty can affect a person's mind and emotions. A huge adaptation of Hamlet that many people are unaware of is Disney's The Lion King. While not exact in its replication, Disney's mega hit film follows a very similar plotline to the play, and Disney's even admitted to this inspiration. This is a prime example of Shakespeare's work being passed down to new generations and making his work much more accessible to people who wouldn't maybe necessarily read Hamlet by itself. The next, I think this is the final play, is Julius Caesar from 1599. Julius Caesar is a history and tragedy play in Shakespeare's collection. As mentioned before, Shakespeare wrote plays in the historical genre, and Julius Caesar is an example of this. The play somewhat dramatizes the events leading up to and after the assassination of Roman dictator Julius Caesar, which is what places the play into a historical category. Similarly to Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare combines tragedy with another genre. Here, he combines historical aspects, just how he did tragedy and romance in the former. The play focuses on Brutus, a character who faces dilemmas with morality and politics. Brutus is a senator who believes Caesar's rise to fame threatens Rome. This way of thinking is common amongst others in Rome who are against Caesar, known as his conspirators. Eventually, the conspirators kill Caesar in an act of liberty. After Caesar's death, the conspirators struggle to maintain control in the Roman Republic, and ultimately a civil war breaks out. Most characters face downfall, namely Brutus and Cassius. This is a story about betrayal and the consequences of political actions. Though the play is a dramatization, Julius Caesar was a real Roman general in history, giving the play a non-fiction background and inspiration. Shakespeare's exploration of Caesar's demise introduces characters that are not real people who lived in Caesar's time, but one could envision that these characters existed. Um, I'm sure Cassius and Brutus, obviously, they're made up by Shakespeare, but what we mean by this is that there were people in ancient Rome that were just like Brutus and Cassius. They are more so a replication of what history has told us happened back then. While they aren't real people, um, people like this existed in Caesar's time. While Julius Caesar explores themes of betrayal and political jealousy from characters such as Brutus and Cassius, ultimately the dissection of each character's motivations comes from Caesar himself. Caesar's lust for power and reckless ambition are dangerous for Rome, and being known as a tyrant was what triggered the coup he faced. Brutus's motivation is to protect the citizens of Rome from tyranny, and this is his main motivation throughout the play. Cassius's motivations are more complex, as he is seen to be more manipulative in his hatred of Caesar, heavily implying a jealousy. This is a huge theme behind the play. Political power is something that should be in the hands Is political power something that should be in the hands of just anyone? Should it be earned? The chaos ensuing from Caesar's death causes Brutus to realize he caused exactly what he sought out to prevent. This is the true tragedy at play. Here is where we see that Caesar's character itself is the tragedy's core. Despite not causing the chaos itself intrinsically, his prior actions sparked all the discourse and drama in Rome after dying. This play is not as widely adapted as other works of Shakespeare's. However, the 1953 film adaptation is most widely known, starring classic film actor Marlon Brando. A more familiar nod to the play, at least this is familiar to me, is in the 2004 film Mean Girls, where a character critiques the play to reflect the plotline of the film Mean Girls, not so much the plotline of Caesar, but she does reference the play in a whole speech she gives to her class. The girl reads an essay about Brutus and Caesar to encapsulate her feelings about real life events. The comedy film surrounds a teenage girl who is somewhat of a tyrant bully in her high school, as well as her ultimate demise in that film itself. So it's sort of like a relation of the play into another work of media, which I think is kind of cool. To conclude, William Shakespeare's work is diverse and hard to sum up in just one presentation. His numerous plays and poems are some of the most widely renowned and studied across the world. Incorporating aspects of tragedy, comedy, and history into his work is something that Shakespeare was able to do. Modern day playwrights and authors can barely do a single genre, let alone three. Works of his are studied across high schools worldwide. Most schools even require that Shakespeare be taught in academic English courses. I know at my high school, Shakespeare was taught in every um, prep for university English course. It was taught very widely. Um, while his work can be difficult to decipher, it is incredibly rewarding and satisfying to study him. This comes from the themes present in his plays, with so many characters that entire essays could be written about. Complex characters such as Lady Macbeth, Hamlet, and Julius Caesar can be named in this regard. As well as this, Shakespeare is used to support many modern works on the stage and screen, like I had referenced before the Lion King aspects in Mean Girls. As well as this, Shakespeare is used, sorry about that. Um, Ultimately, something can be learned from reading old works of literature and giving up on something because it can be perceived as difficult. Prevents one from unlocking true analysis of great storytelling. And I have my references here, which is just copies of each of the plays, which is mainly what we went off for this presentation. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'm going to post this on the online um, discussion forum thingy for any questions.